Hey everybody, it's Rick Trummer from Rick Trummer Consulting and Training, and this week we're going to be going over a bunch of different color things in theories that we've got going. One of the things that everybody always says to me is, can we change color to adjust for electronic signals? And you can definitely do that. We posted a little bit of a video on Thursday last week, but the feedback I was getting back, and thank you for all of you getting back to me, is you had no premise on some of the things that were going on. So what I did was I dug in a few of the different samples that I have been using this on to maybe better explain the process. So today what I'm going to do is going to go through the process of changing color and hopefully how specifically the Hue and Saturation tool is going to be working inside Photoshop. So let's go into the Hue and Saturation tool. So we've got the properties area on here inside the new layer that we have. And one of the things last week that people didn't understand specifically were these two bands that were sitting over here. And so what I did is I brought in a very colorful shot to be able to kind of show you a little bit more in detail what this all does and how the hue and saturation slider works. With that said, I'm also going to go in and do a different color switch on you. I know last week we did it with a portrait. This week maybe a landscape might show you a little bit more in detail of what I'm talking about. So let's take a look at this. Last week I was explaining that these two things actually, so this side actually comes into this side. So it's actually a cylinder, and what they did was they put it into two-dimensional form here inside Photoshop so that you could actually go in and actually see it laid flat. But again, remind yourself that this attaches to this end, so it's kind of a continuous flow through. That's going to make real sense when you're going through the blue scale and all of a sudden you're seeing some of it over here on this side and the majority of it over on this side, and you're saying, why is it picking up this kind of bluish green that's over on the other side? Well, because they're actually attached, and that's why they're picking up both sides of that. So again, from last week, I wanted you to kind of take a look at the top one. The top one is where you're at. The bottom one is where you're going. So if you take a look at this image, specifically down in the blue area down here, and again in the red area over here, if we change the hue value, you'll notice that, let's go right into this area. So it's that blue. Remember that before I was saying that this was kind of that blue area down here. Right here it says, anything that was blue is now green. So what it's doing is the bottom is telling you where you're going. The top one is where you've been from the original. So up here, if you remember, we actually said it's red. You'll now notice that red is now kind of this bluish tone. Anything that was green is now into the red area a little bit, although in the yellow you got the purples, which is kind of going through here. So you can kind of see where we're going. So that's exactly how to use these. Again, the top one tells you where you were or what the original file is. The bottom one is where you're actually going with that file. Along with that, it'll also show you some of the other items with your tools. So the saturation, you can either be completely desaturated. You'll notice the entire bottom line goes gray, or you can be oversaturated. And in this case, it's not really showing you an oversaturation as much as it's telling you that it didn't move. So let's put this back to 0. And then the next one over is your lightness factor. So if you can go all the way to black, you'll notice that your entire line went black here. And you can go all the way to white. And that, again, now your bottom is all white. So that's the lightness factor inside of the actual color scale using hue and saturation. Now with this knowledge, now we can go in and take a look at maybe all of the things that we can do inside the hue and saturation tool. Let's go ahead and lower this down. We don't need it any longer for the explanation. And what I'm going to do is I actually selected a shot now that we'll be able to isolate color toning on. Last week we did this with a portrait. Let's do it this week with some leaves. So what I'm going to do is go back into the hue and saturation area. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the actual leaves that are in the shot. Now they appear to be green, but appearance is not always necessarily what you want here. You want to get it exact. So if you take this off master, right now it's on master, we're just going to move this to whatever we want. Let's just move it to greens because that's kind of where we think it is. But what we're going to do is we're going to collapse these two together. So we're going to click on down here where the bars start, and we're going to push them all against each other. You can see we pushed it right out of the green zone and they're now collapsed and they're in the yellow zone. That's okay. It doesn't matter where they land at this point. We're going to grab our eyedropper by just clicking on the eyedropper, and we're going to come over and just click on any one of these leaves. You'll notice that it kind of went right into this zone here, and you'll notice from the top it actually says yellows too. So it doesn't consider it being a green, it considers it being more of a yellow shade. So let's go ahead and click all of those areas off. Now you'll notice down below here, it hasn't changed the color at all. It's still going from yellow to yellow. What we're going to do is we're going to desaturate this area so that we can actually get a visual. So I'm going to actually take this and desaturate it. Now you'll notice that a bunch of little items went gray here. That's perfect for me because what I'm doing is I'm isolating that tone. You'll notice now if you look over on your scale, anything that was now yellow or that was that yellows too is now going into gray here. What we're going to do is we're going to continue on selecting all of the other leaves in this area. You can either hold down your shift key or you can hit the plus eyedropper. And what that will do is you're going to be adding to the selection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and add all of the leaves until I get to a point. Now, I've got them all selected, and you'll notice that the area widened out. I'm going to grab the two outer ends of the feather bar to make sure it's wrapping around. So I'm just going to click on here, bring that around, make sure it's going to wrap on both ends. So I'm just pulling it out a little bit. Now at this point, I can take my saturation back to 0 if I so desire. And now I can change the color. So I've got it all isolated, so let's turn it into fall. So instead of having that green tone, we now have, more of a fall color shade. So that's the way that you can actually click on those colors to do it. Hopefully this explanation is a little bit more detailed than last week and that you're getting a little bit more out of it. We're going to be continuing on this color series throughout the week, and I'm hoping that you're enjoying this series on retouching/color. And again, tune in on Wednesday for another video from Rick Trummer Consulting and Training. I am Rick Trummer, and I'm hoping you're enjoying this next series. Have a great day, everybody.